Hi, I'm Mike Field.
I'm Pat Whalen.
Pat is a lifelong comic book geek.
And Mike is a filmmaker and storyteller.
So naturally, a bulk of our conversations surround the world of the Marvel movies. Some consider the MCU one of the greatest achievements in modern-day filmmaking, and others just think they're comic book movies. Each episode will tackle one film and discuss the differences between the comic book and what's on screen. We'll explore the growth of the Marvel Cinematic Universe from its inception to present day and beyond, and have a little fun along the way. You may not have asked for it, you certainly don't need it, but you'll be happy we're here. We think. This is yet another MCU podcast. Welcome back to episode 2 of phase 1 of the yet another MCU podcast. How you doing, Pat?
I'm doing pretty well. Today we're going to look at Incredible Hulk.
The Incredible Hulk, indeed. Not the Incredible Hulk starring Mark Ruffalo, but the Incredible Hulk starring Edward Norton.
Yeah.
Do you think there's people out there that don't remember this?
Absolutely. And I was going to ask you this. You are our forgotten cinema expert.
Plug to my other podcast.
Yes. Why was this one forgotten?
Well, I remember when I first watched it, I remember not a lot of stuff happening. And I didn't realize that it's as Gail Ann Hurd calls it, a requel, a reboot / sequel, which I'm glad that never caught on.
Thank God.
But I didn't realize it kind of related to the other one, to Hulk, to Ang Lee's Hulk.
Right.
But I guess it does. And even though they just recasted everybody, I would think that because it just didn't have a lot of action, really. I mean, you have some of the pieces in the beginning, the scene in the bottle factory and stuff like that. Yep. No, I mean, it really just kind of lays there. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of character work in this movie, which we'll get into because I actually appreciate it upon rewatch. Mm-hmm. But let's get into some of the facts. So we're talking about the Incredible Hulk. This was released on June 13th, 2008, a Friday. Has a runtime of 112 minutes, rated PG-13. Production budget of $150 million. Its opening weekend, it made $55 million. Domestic, $134 million. Worldwide, $263 million. So depending upon their marketing budget, it probably was a wash.
Yeah. I think, compared to the later ones, we know that The Incredible Hulk is the least grossing movie in the MCU. But that's not a bomb.
No.
It's still a pretty good opening night.
Sure.
Especially in that summer.
It's also the shortest movie in the MCU, which makes sense because it's in the beginning of these movies. And, there's probably not as much stuff they're trying to cram in there.
Well, I know initially they were looking at, I think it was going to be 135 minutes and they cut off, there's hours upon hours that they had on the cutting room floor that the studio wanted. They wanted it shorter. Norton and the director, Louis Leterrier, wanted it to be a little bit longer, dive more into those character pieces, but they cut it down to 112.
Yeah.
And
I think shorter is better.
I agree.
It's easier. It's palatable. And, there's always stuff that you can edit out of a movie that you don't. Yeah, that's extraneous. When you start getting into the later MCU movies, you start trying to set up other movies and other subplots. And so it gets a little difficult and it does make it makes the runtime a little bit more bloated. So as Pat was saying, directed by Louis Leterrier. Did you say that right? Did I say it wrong?
Don't know if I did.
Whatever.
One of us said it right. One of us said it wrong.
His other work, he's done the Transporter series, Clash of the Titans. I think he did, was it Wrath of the Titans? Was that the sequel to that? The remakes? Yeah,
I believe so.
Written by Zach Penn. He wrote The Avengers and Ready Player One. It has an uncredited rewrite by Edward Norton. Edward Norton is not going to say notorious because I actually like Edward Norton. But he does do a pass on most of the scripts that he is handed, which, if you know anything about Hollywood, makes sense. Music by Craig Armstrong. He's from Great Gatsby, Moulin Rouge. Cinematography by Peter Menzies Jr. The only one I wrote down here was Die Hard with a Vengeance because I like that movie.
Oh, great movie.
I'll run through the cast. As we said, Edward Norton plays Bruce Banner, Liv Tyler, Betty Ross, Tim Roth as Emil Blonsky, William Hurt as General Ross. He is Betty Ross's father. His actual credit is General Thunderbolt Ross, and Tim Blake Nelson as Samuel Stearns.
Don't forget Ty Burrell as aka Phil Dunphy.
He was forgotten in the movie, so I have forgotten him in the credit.
That's fair.
So, well, I guess, I don't want to go straight to that, but
let's do a quick review.
We're going to do a quick review of the movie, and then we'll get into our usual comic verse first movie, and then this movie's role in the MCU universe, or the MCU, excuse me, itself. So, Pat, when was the last time you saw this? I always ask this of my other partner in the Forgotten Cinema podcast. When was the last time you saw this?
I don't remember the exact date. It was probably a couple of years ago. They run it on FX all the time.
Okay.
And that, I would usually catch it, maybe not the full thing, but in pieces here and there. I love the set pieces. So if I'm ever jumping into one of those, I'll stick around.
Well, which ones stand out?
The fight on the college campus is one of my absolute favorites.
Okay.
I think Leterrier knows how to direct action, and he does a really good job.
You mean where the Jeeps are just suddenly coming out of everywhere, jumping in?
Yeah,
that's fine. That's fine.
But the fight scenes with, I think, the way the Hulk moves, the way, especially when Blonsky, who had been shot up with the super soldier serum at that point, was able to move quicker than his soldier counterparts and really take on the Hulk in that like confined space where he's jumping all around him. That is, I think that's my favorite part of the movie.
That fight scene.
That
itself.
fight scene.
Okay. You don't like the fight scene in Harlem / We Shot in Toronto at the end?
I think it's good.
Yeah.
I think it's, I mean, it's definitely one we don't see a lot of because, again, this is a little bit more grittier of a movie. Than we get used to in the MCU. And it's brutal. They're going back and forth. They're stabbing at each other. They're clawing and choking each other. And it is a brutal fight. And I think they do a good job with it.
Much like our first movie in the MCU and our first episode where we talked about Iron Man, I thought that this movie was more personal in terms of Bruce Banner's plight.
Yes.
I know that, like we said, but we just talked about, it's a requel. So it does, like, if you had not seen Hulk, which starred Eric Bana as Bruce Banner, I guess you're okay with this one because even though I don't like when they do this in movies, they actually put the origin story in the credit sequence. You know what I mean? I get why you do that because you're kind of saying, hey, remember the first one?
Well, even then they changed some of the origin in here from that first movie. They used the one from the TV show, the old Lou Ferrigno, Bill Bixby TV show from the 70s. But I guess you don't really need to know. You just need to know that he's a man on the run and he turns into Hulk. Because when they in this one, when they initially have him turn into Hulk down twice, they did the first two times they have him transform. One down in the Brazilian bottle factory, and then again on the college campus where he's trapped in that glass walkway.
The walkway, yes.
They play it more like a horror movie.
Yes, I do like that. It's a little. He's more frightening.
Yeah,
he's more of a monster. He's scary.
He is scary.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
they didn't need the origin story. Like I think they kind of played off the origin story so that when he does transform, you don't really know exactly what's coming. Now, comic book readers, anybody that sees the title that says Incredible Hulk, you know it's coming. But
well, I mean, I hope anyone knows it's
right.
coming.
But you kind of like, they play it off with like, oh, you're not really sure what this beast is going to look like.
Right. So you referenced the television series. That is why, or one of the reasons, or probably the main reason why this movie is the only movie in phase one that is not a Paramount movie. It was, I know we talked about in the last episode where, Disney just bought everything up, but let's pretend Disney did not do that.
Right.
This was a Universal film because Universal owned the TV rights.
Yeah. And they own the rights to the old movie as well.
Right.
So that's why this falls into that sequel reboot, prequel.
It's called the requel. Come on now, Pat.
This is why this falls into that requel category because it was part of that, but then they're trying to tag it into the other the rest of the universe that they were building. But what did you think of, because this is, we talk about Eric Bana, then we jump into Mark Ruffalo next in the Avengers. What did you think of Edward Norton?
Well, I enjoy Edward Norton as an actor. Obviously everyone knows him probably from Fight Club. I mean, he hit the scene with Primal Fear, and I know that people are like, oh, there's always that kind of narrative that he's difficult to work with and that he's just somebody that's always gonna kind of not combative but just kind of like workshop whatever the character. And they used to say that about Russell Crowe a lot too. I don't buy that narrative. As somebody who has directed stuff before, I would much rather have an actor who is questioning and asking and just kind of working stuff rather than somebody who's just kind of like, yeah, all right, whatever, not caring. So you want the opposite. So I don't mind his performance in this movie. I think it's this movie itself, the Bruce Banner character in The Incredible Hulk, as opposed to the other ones, is a bit more personal. Like I said, it's a bit more character driven in terms of, you know, when he's trying to hide from Betty and he sees her and then, you know, like, and he's just trying to make things right. Like, and she's talking to him about, you know, maybe you can control it. And he's like, I don't want to. I want to get rid of it. And that's his whole goal. No, I enjoy Edward Norton. So yeah, do you like him in this?
I like him in this. The one thing that I found upon the rewatch was I really disliked the scenes between him and Liv Tyler.
Oh, really?
And Betty. I thought the dialogue was wooden. I thought she had no chemistry with him. I didn't think he really had much chemistry with her. But when he's on his own, when he's in Brazil, when he's living by himself, when he's, you know, he does the action pretty well. And when he's doing the transformation into the Hulk, I really enjoyed his performance.
To your point, I probably would suggest that her relationship with her father, Thunderbolt Ross, is probably stronger because like there's that moment when she's like, don't talk to me
as your daughter
anymore. And he's like, you're not in handcuffs because you're my daughter. Like that's a nice little moment there.
Yeah, it is.
I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a different chemistry between the actors. I just think that their character arcs are on different paths where it's tough to kind of bring Betty's character arc with him and make it believable maybe for you. So I can understand that. Okay. I actually like Liv Tyler quite a bit. I think she's overlooked way too often and stuff. I never saw The Leftovers. She was in that, right?
She was.
Yeah.
And I saw the first couple seasons. She has this kind of wooden personality, but in The Leftovers it made sense because she was this survivor of you know, essentially a precursor to what happens in Endgame, where like a percentage of the population disappears. And so she's broken down.
You mean the blip?
The blip. I forget what they call it in Leftovers.
They call it Leftovers. I don't know. Well, who cares?
I think
we're not talking about that.
Right.
All right. So back to this. Did you notice that? And I didn't notice this when I first watched it. I had to go back and kind of like check out some scenes. That the entire film is tinted green. So the entire film is tinted the same green as the Hulk, like very slightly, but yeah. So the whole film is tinted green. I like that. I like that.
That was nice.
Yeah.
I wonder if, because there was a couple moments when she's another great character moment when they're in the cave together, where he's still the Hulk and he's shouting at the thunderstorms.
Yes, because he's angry. He's getting scared.
Yeah, he's scared. He's angry. He's been hitting his head on the roof of the cave. Yeah. I did appreciate that levity there. I thought that
also shows, not to cut you off, but that also shows that he's not in control.
Right. What I was going to say there was I felt like I liked a lot of the visual effects throughout the movie. I thought they did a great job with both Abomination and with Hulk himself and with the transformations, but he gets washed out in that scene so much with the thunderstorms and maybe with the green tinting. They
did a couple things in here where they made him look gray to reference when he was gray, when he first became Hulk gray, which you know more about than I do. But I know that they did some of that stuff purposely. Now, in terms of the movie itself, I didn't realize that they were using the same serum for Captain America for this, because that's different. That's not in everything else. Like that's new. That's specific to this episode.
That is specific to this,
right? So, and you don't really know that until he goes into and maybe we'll get into this with the MCU stuff. Mm-hmm. He goes to get the serum for Blonsky.
Yeah, it's in like files that are frozen away.
Right. So I didn't know that. I thought that was interesting. Because they're still saying that Banner was, gamma poisoning, radiation poisoning, but it's not just that the serum made him crazy. They're talking about how there's different levels of you have to be exact in your radiation and in your gamma exposure and stuff like that, and they were not. So that's why he's the Hulk.
Well, no, and they did that a lot with Blonsky's character as well. It was Abomination who had the two different mixtures.
When he goes to Samuel Stearns, who's played by Tim Blake Nelson, and says, give me what he got. He's like, I don't know what's in you already. And did you like Tim Blake Nelson's portrayal of Stearns in this movie?
I thought it was okay, little manic.
See, I can't get out of my head Tim Blake Nelson from Oh Brother Where Art Thou? So I always think of that. He has a style.
He does.
So I don't know, maybe it just didn't fit into this movie. But I don't hate it. It's just a different style.
Yeah. Maybe this is where the studio was coming in. Maybe this is where Norton was coming in and Leterrier were coming in. It was kind of like a hodgepodge all over the place. And there were some great moments. And then there were some other moments where like Stearns jumping all over the place. The cab scene that we talked about. Does it fit? Does it not fit? Wonder what was left on the cutting room floor.
Probably a lot of
some of that stuff.
I'll tell you what's left on the cutting room floor. Probably Ty Burrell's scene where he actually knew that that Bruce Banner was back, because he shows up. She basically ditches her boyfriend at the time, Betty. Goes drive. I don't know how she found him. Goes driving on the bridge to find him in the rain, and you never see her boyfriend again until after the big scene that you love so much in front of the college, which I like it too. Yeah. I'm not saying it that way. And then he's like, "Thank God you called." Thunderbolt Ross is like, "Thank God you called." I'm like, how did we know that he knew?
Right.
Like, you couldn't toss us a scene where he's like, "Hey, Bruce, welcome back," or anything.
Well, I think when she asks Stanley, the pizza guy, Stanley Leibowitz, which is Stanley's real name, is Stanley, who's the creator of the Hulk. When they ask Stanley, she says, "Just tell me if that's what I think I saw." Yeah. Ty Burrell's standing right there.
Yeah, but he just does this, like, there's no just nothing. Like, I just picture like, "Hey, who's that?" And she's like pushing him away. Like, what are you doing?
Where are you going in the back alley here by yourself?
He should have been in the back seat of the car when she was on the
did they not drive to the pizza place together? Did she go home? Did they not live together? What?
He's just forgotten. And then he shows up, and then he's got this scene where he's like, I know why she doesn't talk of you. And I'm like, oh, I'll see you later.
But was he at the college campus fight scene?
No.
Then how does he know that his daughter was put in harm's way like that? Because the cell phone footage that we see is a lot of just like the army shooting at the Hulk. They don't see the big helicopter. I don't believe they see the big helicopter coming down and crashing, and he's got to cover Betty. So how does he? We're diving too deeply into. No. Listen,
we're talking about the movie right now, but no, he's just not there. And I think just to your point of a lot of stuff being cut, I'm sure that's some of it. So of course, with every MCU movie, you have to have the Stan Lee cameo. I know, obviously, moving forward, there won't be there, but every time I see him in the movie, it takes me out. Every single time I see him in a movie, it takes me out of it. And that's fine. I get why he's in there, and I'm not bemoaning that. It always pulls me out of the movie.
And I think the ones that do it correctly, I think you'll see the Russo brothers do it pretty well later on. The good ones put them in the beginning, or they'll put them right at the end. I didn't mind this one as much as I mind some of the later ones that we'll see, where it really feels like they're forcing him in there. So I didn't really hate this one, and maybe because this one was early on in the process. I agree with you. The later ones take me out completely, but this one didn't.
So he drinks the blood, basically, of Banner, because Banner gets cut and it goes into the bottle, and where he hits the bottling factory. So that scene where the blood was falling took a year for them. Took the visual effects guy a year to do.
Wow.
I know. I think we said this last time for Iron Man. There's no villain in this movie. There's villainous obstacles.
Yeah.
I know that Blonsky becomes the Abomination at the end of the movie, but
it's the same way that Obadiah became the Ironmonger, and so they have these mirror villains of them.
Right. So you're supposed to assume that Ross is the villain after, or whether it's S.H.I.E.L.D. or the U.S. Army, whatever it is, trying to get him. And this is a journey or a road movie where Banner's trying to, get rid of the Hulk.
Right. And that's more what the conflict is the different ways that the obstacles about dealing with the Hulk. And really, he comes to terms with the Hulk at the end of the movie, and that that's how he solves his obstacle, the thing that's in the way. So you're right. I don't think there's not a villain per se. There's like you say, villainous characters.
And even Blonsky, his character itself, you first see him. He's supposed to be this cocky, balls to the wall kind of thing. Yep. And then he gets the juice. He wants the juice. It's like, oh, I want what he had. And then he's so ignorant, and it gets kicked and destroyed. Which that's fine. That's his character. That's fine. But there's one moment at the end of the movie where, before he becomes Abomination, the woman who works alongside Ross is talking to Stearns about, what did you do? What she's trying to get, what else?
Yeah, information out of him.
And he knocks her out or kills her or whatever. I think he just knocks her out. And he's like, oh, what an annoying bitch.
It makes no sense.
It doesn't, because I'm like, you haven't talked to her all movie.
She's been basically support staff for Ross the whole thing.
Right.
And she's no
sense.
You'd think that he'd want to be sitting there and saying, oh yeah, what did you give him? What does all this stuff do? What does it mean? Instead of just, shoot me up with it. Who cares?
So you're knocking her out because to make you menacing? You don't need to do that. No. She should leave the room. You can slide on in and be like, I want What? And he's clearly a willing participant. Stearns is willing to do it.
Right.
So there's really, you don't need to threaten him.
No.
So yeah, so I didn't like that scene because it didn't make sense to me.
No, and they were trying to force the villainous turn there,
Right.
where they could have just done it the minute he became the abomination. Yeah, I agree.
I didn't say I was unwilling. I just need informed consent.
I mean, that's really all the notes I have about the movie itself. Why don't we let's get into like the differences.
The comment, yeah.
Yes. So that I can stop not talking about them because I keep wanting to bring them up. But okay.
Okay.
All right. So why not, if you can, make it brief. Give me a brief how the Hulk became
The Hulk.
the Hulk, like where it came from, where it started, for people that maybe don't know or want a refresher.
Yeah. So
like me.
The Incredible Hulk was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby back in 1962. Again, these are names that we're going to bring up many, many times. Lee and Kirby are very much, I mean, they built the Marvel comic universe and influences are all over the place. So they pulled a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde character, essentially. Banner initially became the Hulk only at night. So the anxiety, the anger wasn't one of the driving forces.
Like he would go to sleep and wake up as the Hulk?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was a short 6-issue run initially, and then it got canceled. They brought the character back later on in various forms. This changes the origin story. Banner in the movie and in the TV show from the 70s, he purposely did the testing on himself. He was so sure of what it was doing. In the comic books, Banner had worked for Ross, and that's where he met Betty. He was developing a gamma bomb for harnessing gamma radiation, and it was going to be a weapon for the U.S. Army. So again, we're in the 60s, Vietnam, all that stuff, Cold War. When he was testing it, there was a young teenager named Rick Jones who was out on the testing field. Rick Jones ends up becoming an Avengers ally. We don't need to worry about him. He doesn't show up here. Bruce rushes out to save him from it, and in doing so, he gets caught in the blast, and that's what turns him into the Hulk. And so that's the big change here. So as far as origins go,
let me ask you this: in the comic, he's not somebody, because I always wonder, like, because the Hulk's supposed to be him, his kind of like his id, if you will, right? Yeah, I think I used that right. His anger, all that stuff that we don't show, or we kind of can control and manage. Right. He can't. Was Banner, before he had the accident, was he ever somebody who would be angry a lot?
So this gets added in later on, later stories. There were issues with him and his father, which is touched on in the Eric Bana movie,
right?
Where his father,
Nick Nolte plays his dad in that movie, right? Yes. Yeah. So
his mother passes away basically by the hands of his father. His father was abusive. So yeah, but when he turns into the Hulk, he has all these feelings that, they mention it in the film a little bit. The amygdala is all wrong. So he's got those coupled with this gamma radiation that forces transformation in the anger.
Okay. Now I'm just peppering you questions. Yeah. Is Samuel Stearns in the comic at all?
Yes, he is.
Okay, because I thought I read that they wasn't. I know that in the movie itself that he has the blood that drips on his wound, and I guess that was supposed to set up the leader.
Yes.
So is he the leader in the comic? Okay, so talk about that.
So the leader is Samuel Stearns was, instead of in this movie, he's a college professor or scientist, whatever he is. Who knows?
I think that was accurate.
Yeah. He's a janitor. There was another gamma radiation incident that affected him. And
this is not even connected to anything that Banner was doing.
No, it was connected to it, but it was a different incident. So instead of where Bruce gets the size and the strength and the anger, he instead gets this thirst for knowledge. So he is reading as much as he can, gaining every bit of knowledge that he absolutely can. And his brain does grow to a bigger size.
Much like the dude in the Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds. What's his character?
Yes. Hector Hammond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of like that.
Okay.
And you'll see.
Sorry to jump off to another rival.
Well, you'll see it with comic books. Like they all stole from each other.
Gotcha.
It's like,
makes sense.
Batman had Robin. Captain America needs Bucky.
Right.
So Stearns becomes the leader. The leader very much is, where Abomination is brawn versus brawn, then it's brains versus brawn. And that sets up the conflict for them.
So I read that the Abomination in the comic was more lizard-like.
Yes.
Okay. But was it Blonsky?
It was yes, it was Blonsky, but Blonsky wasn't a Royal Air Force member.
Okay, what was it?
He was a Russian spy.
Okay.
And he was a Russian spy, and he finds this gamma radiation device and starts performing tests on himself.
Okay, geez.
And again, so it's got a lot of that similar, I want to test this on me. I want to get stronger. I want to, beat the Hulk. The design, like you said, was a little bit more reptilian. Eventually in the comics, he goes and lives in the New York sewers. Okay. So he's got that kind of New York lizard man, alligator in the sewer type of rumor. But yeah, in this, I really like the design in this one where it's a lot more, it's bonier. They mentioned that they had to give him the shots in the bone marrow. So that kind of explains where that's coming from. Did you like what they did
with Abomination?
Yeah.
Well, I think my main issue in the movie is just how they got to him.
Yeah.
So like I said, we talked about a little bit, like we both didn't like, he wasn't the villain. He just pops up and then he's like, I want Hulk. But yeah, no, I didn't mind it. I just think it wasn't the Abomination in and of itself. I think I'll tell you what, I didn't like it as much when I just thought they made it up for the movie. I didn't realize that it was from the comics. So once I learned that, which was not this viewing, but a previous one, then I was okay with it because when they use the source material, I can appreciate that. When they just start making up their own stuff and it's like, you've got a whole bevy of stuff that you can use here. You've got tons and tons of stories that people have created. Just use something from that. So when they do that, I don't mind that. Talk about, because I brought it up briefly, talk about the whole thing where Hulk was gray, because I don't get that. I didn't understand that.
To dive into that, we need to dive into Ty Burrell's character.
Okay.
Leonard Samson. Hey, Ty. We're going to give you more screen time than...
He's back.
So Leonard Samson, he ends up becoming a superhero, but he mentions in this one, he's a psychiatrist. He is the Hulk psychiatrist. And in doing so, he realizes that Bruce Banner had suffered from the PTSD. He also realized there's a dissociative identity disorder in there. So he's working with him to identify it. And as they continue to do that, and as Banner practices a little bit more with gamma radiation techniques and kind of coming to grips with the Hulk, he has these various transformations. So the one that we see most of the time, which is the Green Hulk, is Savage Hulk. Okay. It's the brutal one. It's the strongest one, less intelligent than later ones. We'll see one, and they do it in Endgame where Ruffalo and the Hulk become one.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Smart Hulk. Dr. Hulk. I don't remember what the official title is, but
is it Dumb Hulk?
Instagram Hulk. But so it's this one where he knows he's the Hulk. He's not as strong as Savage Hulk, but he's got the mind and body of,
and he's gray. He becomes gray.
So that one is green. Then there's the gray one, which has a great alternate name, which is Mr. Joe Fix-It. Okay. And he walks around with like tuxedos on all the time. So
this
is one where he's less strong. He's not as strong as the green version, but he's a little bit more cunning, a little bit more manipulative. He's all this like mental stuff that Banner isn't able to do all the time. So I'll show you the picture in a bit.
Okay,
it's fantastic.
So when Banner changes, does he know he's going to change into one of these Hulks, or does he? No, I'm assuming this is part of a comic series.
Yeah. Okay. So there were multiple times where they picked up on this. I believe this is the Peter David run.
Okay.
Long time Incredible Hulk writer, wrote the series for like 12 years. He had brought a lot to the mythos, and this is one of the recommended readings for the week, but the Jeff Loeb, Tim Sales series, Hulk Gray, where they play up that color version of him where he's dealing with a little bit more of the psychological issues he had as a child and coming to grips with himself as the Hulk.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's above me. It's like, I don't like, I guess I understand. I get like in a comic series run, you want to try different things. So that's fine.
And when the character's been around since the 60s, how much can you just have him be a mindless brute?
Yeah.
So I think they wanted to play up these other aspects of the character. Banner is smart for a long time, trying to get rid of the Hulk and then embracing the Hulk. He's been both a hero and kind of a thorn in the Earth's side where, if he goes off into a rage, who can stop him? What does that mean? Eventually it happens enough where they send him off into space.
You're talking in the comic.
In the comics. Yeah.
Okay.
No, they don't send Edward Norton into space, but I'd love to see it.
No. I meant I thought you meant like in the MCU universe.
In the MCU, Hulk voluntarily.
Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually. Okay. Well, I mean, we can, unless you're done, we can segue into all that.
I think just the other one was the Ross family.
Okay.
Bruce and Betty are in love. Daughter of General Ross. That all stays the same.
Thunderbolt
Ross. Eventually, they do get married.
Okay.
Bruce and Betty. There's a lot of things in there. It's comic book conflict where the girlfriend who he can't tell his secret to is in love with somebody else because he doesn't open up. All that. That's so she's been engaged and in relationships with other people and eventually married a guy that worked under Thunderbolt's staff. So we do see that there is some stories in the comics where after they're married, Blonsky, as the Abomination, poisons her with gamma radiation and she dies.
Oh,
Now it's comic books and she eventually comes back and
as Lady Hulk. She-Hulk.
No, she's not She-Hulk.
Okay. Who's She-Hulk?
I believe her Jessica Walters. That doesn't sound right. That's
an actress.
That's the actress.
Oh my gosh, is she She-Hulk?
In Arrested Development, she just turned.
Buster turns her into She-Hulk.
No, but she does not become She-Hulk. She dies from the poisoning, and Hulk gets
angry.
He gets framed for it too.
Oh, jeez.
So that's what Banner goes on the run again. He's a fugitive. So a lot of these fugitive storylines are where Banner's walking across America, like he's walking the earth. He's Jules and Bolt.
Gonna walk the earth.
Gonna walk the earth. There's a lot of stories where it kind of pulls from this walk the earth fugitive mentality. He kind of gets,
the Hulk comic.
Which is also the influence for the TV show too.
Okay.
And then as far as Thunderbolt, he's this guy that's obsessed with capturing the Hulk. William Hurt plays him fantastically.
I read the note that he plays him like Ahab, searching for a white whale. Yeah.
He reminded me of J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson in the Spider-Man movies, where like they just pull these guys straight out of the comics, put them into the movie and say, just do it.
If you took it from me, I'm going to put you in a hole for the rest of your life.
Why don't we get into the MCU now? And I don't know where to start in terms of this movie or this character. I mean, we can definitely go how he's through the universe, but I want to do more of a comparison where how he is in this movie compared to where he goes to. And obviously there's a different actor that plays him, so there's going to be a different take on the character, but that's not necessarily the actor's fault. It's also the way it's written. And one of the things that I immediately noticed when we first start with the Hulk and the Incredible Hulk compared to like where he is now, or where he not even where he is now, but even like the next movie you see him in, which is the Avengers, right? Yeah. Is that in this movie, he's more, like you say, savage. He's more of a monster. He's scary. Yeah. I can believe that he is not something you can control. And then in the Avengers, where he's amicable at some point, no, it's not as scary. And the way they play him up, they play it more for comedic effect sometimes when he like takes Loki and throws him around, which is fun. It's fun and it's cool.
And as an end to the fight scene, I think that's a good relief.
Absolutely. And I'm not necessarily poo-pooing that. I'm just saying there is a shift. And does that, I guess, bother you at all, or?
I don't know if it bothers me. I want to maybe bring it back just a little bit to what you're talking about is in terms of where we see the character progress.
Right.
So in this one, it's, the Hulk it's a thing he wants to get rid of. Doesn't like it, wants it completely excised. By the end of the movie, he's learning to come to terms with it.
I know they talk about at the end when he's in British Columbia.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there meditating.
Yeah.
And he makes himself green. The eyes go green. So that's what they were saying. They were alluding to. He's discovering that, where Mark Ruffalo's great line in the Avengers when he's like, my secret is I'm always angry,
right?
Which is a fantastic line. And I think that's supposed to be that scene where Edward Norton is the genesis of that,
right?
Which is great.
Yeah. And I think that works. First, it's the incident, and then he accepts it and acknowledges it, and it becomes the other guy. And then he regresses in Age of Ultron,
yes,
where he gets mind controlled by Scarlet Witch and goes on this tear through wherever.
It was in Africa, right?
Yeah,
they have the big guy initiative or whatever they call it, because they send that giant.
Oh, the Hulkbuster armor, yeah. And then we see it in Thor Ragnarok, where he just lets the Hulk take over. He lets the other guy be in charge now. Yeah. Then eventually we see it in Endgame where the two of them work together. Yeah, but I mean, I think this movie does set up that progression for the Hulk.
Sure.
Now, does it work with the change in actor?
It's always off-putting when you change actors like that. You just it's there's nothing you can't get around it. It's just, it is what it is, and it's fine. I mean, we're all adults here. We understand that some people just aren't going to move on. I think I probably have, in terms of the Hulk itself in the universe, I think I probably have more of a problem with the fact that you don't see Betty Ross anymore. and the fact that Thunderbolt comes back 8 movies later or something like that, and you don't he doesn't get his own movie again. Like, we're forced to see the Hulk's progression, or that's character's progression through other movies, which is unfair, because it's that you immediately, as much as you have personal scenes between him and other characters, especially I know they did a lot of stuff with Black Widow, it's not his movie. You're relegating that to a subplot, whereas you're subconsciously telling people, don't worry about that.
Yeah. And the Hulk's doing stuff in the background.
And that's not fair.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
I agree. And they did try for years to get a sequel off the ground. Eventually it never took off. It could be because of the box office performance, could be because of Norton. There's a number of factors.
I get back then during phase 1, because you don't know because they don't know what's happening.
And back then there was no presentation of, look at the next 12 movies we have coming up.
It was then,
this movie comes out in 2008. We don't get Iron Man 2 until 2010.
Right.
That's a huge. Can you imagine Marvel doing that now?
No. Well, look at the tag though. Look at the so at the end of the movie they do a tag with Thunderbolt Ross. I'm just going to call him that forever now. And Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And that was completely ad-libbed. They had no script. They just showed up and they said, these are your characters. You're just setting up the next thing. And they just did it. And that tells you that they really didn't have a main plan.
So let me ask you, what do you think that tag was supposed to be about?
I think it was supposed to be an extension of Nick Fury at the end of Iron Man talking about, we're going to put the Avengers together. And I think that they were just teasing that.
To do what?
Who knows? I don't think they knew. They probably sat down and eventually want to do a giant Avengers movie.
Right.
So let's just talk about that.
I remember watching it initially and I thought, they're putting together a team. Like, are they going to bring the Hulk in?
Sure.
And then upon a rewatch, I was like, oh no, are they going to go after the Hulk? And the Hulk's going to be the villain in the Avengers movie. That scene, as much as tagged on as it is, gets another reference in one of the Marvel one-shot short films.
Okay.
So Marvel one-shots were these short films that tied into some of the other pieces. There's one called A Thing Happened on the Way to Thor's Hammer, which is essentially a prequel to Thor when the hammer crashes in the desert out there. Then you have one called The Consultant, where you learn that the World Security Council, who is the party in the Avengers that wants to nuke Manhattan, they want to bring on the Abomination. They want him released from prison and want to bring him into the Avengers Initiative and I guess work alongside Tony and all this other stuff. And you learn later on that he's supposed to go to Ross and recruit him, but he's been hired by Phil Coulson and Agent Jasper Sitwell. We don't know yet, obviously. He's been basically hired as a plan to go and piss Ross off so badly that he won't release Abomination. And it works because Fury and some of the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents don't want Abomination released, but that comes out in 2011. So this tag doesn't make any sense until at least 2011. And even then, how much sense does it make?
I almost think that they should have a Hulk movie. I know that the Hulk is now, doing selfies and I don't get this.
Eating bowls upon bowls upon bowls of scrambled eggs.
Whatever. So whatever he is now, I think you can go back and I think you should. I mean, you can't. This is it. I mean, I'm sure he doesn't want to do it again. I'm sure Ruffalo,
I know. I think Ruffalo talks highly of wanting to do a solo movie.
They should. They really, really should. The other thing I wanted to say about that, because I brought it up a little bit, in this movie, clearly the love of his life is Betty Ross.
Yes.
And then we forget that.
Absolutely.
And moving forward, that he starts developing a relationship with Black Widow. That's a little unfair to his personal storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like they did it because she was there.
I believe so too. Yeah. Because what is the movie? Is it the Avengers when she goes and gets him?
In the opening of the Avengers, he's in some cabin. He's in India.
Somewhere.
He goes from
the house, right?
Yeah, he ends his movie in British Columbia. He looks like he's pretty set.
And he looks like Edward Norton.
He ends his movie in British Columbia as Edward Norton, and the next time we see him, he's in Calcutta as Mark Ruffalo. Where's that storyline? Why does he get to Calcutta? Like, what did he do in British Columbia? He was off in the cabin in the woods. I
don't know. But
you're right. Yeah. So they introduce Black Widow goes and gets him. And then in Age of Ultron is where they really up that romantic nature of it, where they have these kind of kitschy little rom-com moments, and then she's the only one that can calm him down. I don't get it. I didn't really like it
again, but that's what happens when you have a main character that doesn't have his own plot line
Right.
of the movie. This is what you have, and I don't know if it's necessarily just the nature of the beast of doing all these movies. You're not going to get everything right. You're not going to get everything perfect, and I get that. It's just unfortunate that you kind of forget about him.
Yeah.
And the Hulk and his storyline. The only other thing I wanted to bring up in terms of this movie's place in the MCU, and we talked about it before a little bit, was the callbacks to Captain America. So clearly they knew that Captain America was coming. That was the next movie, because they reference it a bunch of times. The whole thing with the serum.
Right. They talk about it as a World War II program.
The name of the doctor that uses it on
Yep.
him is on the vial. The fact that they also have Stark Industries there at some point. I thought that was interesting that they were kind of tying it into that world, even in this movie.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the groundwork that they do with the Phase 1 to tie them together is through Howard Stark. They mention him multiple times that he fought against the Nazis, he developed weapons for the government, and then we see it in Captain America when he's played by Dominic Cooper, that he is the one that developed in part the super soldier serum and is working on various weapons for the government and helping with the shield and everything. So Howard Stark is really the cohesive piece to this Phase 1. I always compare it to DC Comics, and in both the comics and the movies, they were kind of a hodgepodge of characters. Superman was made a couple of years later as Batman, Wonder Woman came along, but they were never really tied in together. For the Marvel universe, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, all these guys were the driving force for all these characters. But for the most part, a lot of the stuff that transforms them, makes them superheroes, is science. So they have that building block of science is what drives us, is what makes us heroes. And that's what they continue to do here with Banner and with Howard Stark having that, including the super soldier serum.
It's just, you can just kind of start seeing the mechanism of the MCU forming in this movie. And obviously with Iron Man, you know what? We'll get to Iron Man 2. But yeah, so that was it. That's pretty much what I had.
I just want to know.
Go for it.
How did Thunderbolt go from a general here who, that's a big scandal for him to have
he just shot up an entire campus. Yeah, absolutely.
And then becomes Secretary of State the next time we see him. What happened to our administration in the White House?
Anything's possible, man.
I guess so.
Gotta grease the right palms.
I think that's it for me. Do we answer why this is forgotten? Is it because
this isn't that podcast, man? I think it's the beginning. Let's say if this was in Phase 2 or Phase 3, it's probably a huge hit.
Yeah.
Not this. It's probably a different movie. It's probably much bigger. I think that this type of movie wouldn't get made now in the MCU because, like I said, with Iron Man, it's more personal.
Yeah.
But I think it just doesn't have all the other movies behind it coming up. Oh my God, the new one! So it's not going to be a hit there.
It's not acting as a backdoor pilot to 4 different movies in a Disney Plus series.
It's also coming off of Hulk, which was not a hit.
No.
And nobody liked it. And people are just kind of like, again? So
I will jump in on that real quick. This one was seen as the more commercially viable film of the two. So, we talked last week where Marvel Studios was nothing and then became an independent producer of 2 films coming out within 2 months of each other. They thought, they were taking a shot with Iron Man. They had done the market test that, kids are more likely to play with the Iron Man figures. And then we'll also do Hulk as the requel. It's not going to, it's like fetch. It's not catching on.
Not happening. Stop it, Gretchen.
There was the TV show. There was the movie. There was animated shows. There's roller coasters at Universal Studios. People are more,
I'm taking that.
Yeah, people are more in tune with the character. This is the one that's going to make more money and do well. We'll take a shot with the other one. And then obviously the results were flipped.
It doesn't have a lot of action.
No.
Except aside from that big set piece that you're talking about and the ending, there's really not a lot of action.
Well, because there's another comic book movie that comes out this same summer.
2008?
2008. About a month later, The Dark Knight comes out. The one with Heath Ledger's Joker. There's not a lot of huge action pieces in that one either. Yeah, but that's more of a character piece as well. That
movie's fantastic. That movie's arguably one of the best movies of that decade.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that affects this movie is that if we're going to compare it to Iron Man's success and this movie, is that Tony Stark is a likable character, is a more charismatic character.
Yes.
And that's all thanks to Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
Edward Norton is not so much, he's not that type of character. He's brooding in this a lot of times. So you have a leading man that's not really popping on screen. So that probably affects it as well.
And just to kind of give you what else came out that weekend, it was The Happening.
Oh man.
The weekend before was You Don't Mess with the Zohan.
I like that movie.
and Kung Fu Panda. And then the weekend after was Get Smart. And then later on in the summer is Wall-E and Wanted. And Hancock comes out a few weeks after that. Hellboy 2 is that summer. I mean, this is a huge summer for comic book movies.
Yeah. This is the beginning.
Beginning
of the end. No, I'm just kidding. This is the beginning.
We're all downhill from here.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But stay tuned, because we're not.
Oh, all right. So, yeah, I mean, I think we've done our fair share of going through the Hulk.
Yeah.
So join us next time. We will be talking about the third movie in phase 1, which was Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
I'm masking. I don't know why I'm masking. It's Iron Man 2.
It is Iron Man 2.
So we're going to have a direct sequel now to the first one. I think if this was today's time, we probably wouldn't see an Iron Man 2 until
a couple movies later. Yeah. And again, it took 2 years to get to it, which is unheard of now, where we're getting 3 movies a year.
I mean, yeah, seriously.
Captain Marvel, I think, was in March. And then end of April was Endgame.
It was right on the heels of
July was Spider-Man Far From Home.
Right.
So you had, within maybe 120 days, you had 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then
a little odd. And now you're not having anything until Black Widow, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Which it looks like, according to the trailer, Thunderbolt makes an appearance.
Thunderbolt Ross.
But we'll stay tuned on the continuing adventures of Thunderbolt Ross.
When's he gonna get his own movie? All right, so join us next time for our Iron Man 2 episode, and hang around, as Pat's got some recommended reading for you as always, and thanks for listening, guys. As always, at the end of each episode, we like to send you home with some recommended reading that follows up on some of the characters and plots presented in this week's film. Our recommended reading section is sponsored by Infinite Heroes, comics, cards, and collectibles in Watertown, Connecticut. If you're in the Connecticut or New England area, it's a great location to pick up comics from Marvel, as well as DC, Image, and more. They also have a large collection of trading cards, toys, and collectibles. Owner Paul Santos has worked in comics for years, most recently as an editor at DC Comics. Ask him for a recommendation and tell him we sent you.
Again, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. We do appreciate you taking some time out of your day to listen to us ramble about the Marvel Universe. Hopefully we can give back a little bit with some recommended reading here. First up, we mentioned this briefly early on in the episode, is Hulk Gray. It's by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. Jeff Loeb ends up going on to lead Marvel's television studio, so you see his name a lot on the Netflix shows, some of the other Hulu shows as well. But like his Loeb and Sale's Color series, which includes Daredevil Yellow, Spider-Man Blue, and Captain America White, the Hulk Gray kind of takes the original 6-issue run, original origin story, modernizes it, and also adds some of a deeper dive into the psychology of the hero. So it's actually kind of a good read going into this movie if you're unsure of some of the origins. After that is Hulk Return of the Monster, which it collects the 6-issue series, numbers 34 through 39 of The Incredible Hulk. Written by Bruce Jones, art by John Romita Jr. So we see this despondent and framed Bruce Banner hitchhiking across the USA, kind of piece together the conspiracy against him and coming to terms with himself and just kind of, we see it a lot in this one where he's walking the earth, as we mentioned. And then finally, no list would be complete without a Peter David story. As we mentioned, he's written the character for over 12 years, added so many things to the mythos. This one is actually a 4-issue miniseries called Incredible Hulk Destruction, where he reintroduces the character, the Abomination, into the world of the Hulk. So if you liked Emil Blonsky, you like the Abomination in this one, this is a great one to check out. So that's it for this week. If we missed any, let us know, and we appreciate it. All right, take care.